Welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the story of Moses, but specifically as it's told in the 27th chapter of the Quran, Surah An-Naml. Now, we're not just going to retell the story you might already know. We're going to unpack the really profound philosophical arguments about the very nature of existence that are woven right into this ancient narrative.
So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at Moses' incredible encounter at the burning bush. Then, we'll explore the two amazing signs he was given to back up his mission. After that, we'll get into the really mind-bending philosophy about creation and existence that this story sets up. And finally, we'll analyze that epic confrontation with Pharaoh and what it reveals about the psychology of denial. All right, so our story kicks off in the sacred valley of Telawa. Just picture it. Moses is leading his family through the desert, and he spots a fire off in the distance. But as he gets closer, he realizes this is no ordinary campfire. This is a divine flame, a beacon that's about to change not just his life, but the course of history for his people. Now, the wording here is absolutely key. He who is in the fire doesn't mean God is literally contained within the flames. It's better to think of it like a spotlight. The fire is a manifestation of God's presence, a kind of divine light shining into our world. And from this light comes this incredible blessing, a sacred energy that sanctifies everything it touches. It's what theologians call a theophany, a visible manifestation of God to humanity. And this divine blessing, it wasn't just limited to the fire itself. The text says it extends to whoever is around it. That means Moses, the angels who were said to be there, and the very ground they were standing on. All of it was bathed in this sacred light. The entire area was transformed into a blessed spot, a place where heaven and earth literally met, where the veil between the divine and the material was for a moment lifted. So to prove to a very skeptical Pharaoh that he's a true messenger of God, Moses is given two incredible signs. And these aren't just parlor tricks. They're powerful demonstrations of divine power, designed to be undeniable proof of his mission. The first sign is just a perfect example of the divine working through something completely ordinary. God tells Moses to take his staff, a simple wooden stick he's used for years to herd his flock, and just throw it on the ground. A very simple act, but one that's about to have an absolutely astonishing result. I just love this detail because it's so raw, so human. Here's Moses, standing in the presence of God himself. And yet when his staff turns into a slithering serpent, his first gut instinct is to turn and run for his life. It's this powerful reminder that even the greatest prophets are still human beings with all the fears and frailties that come with it. And it's only after this moment of pure terror that God reassures him, reminding him that in the presence of the divine, there's truly nothing to fear. Okay, this is where things get really fascinating from a literary perspective. The commentary we're using points out that in this chapter, the creature is called a jinn, which is the Arabic word you see there on the left. It emphasizes its speed, its agility. But in other parts of the Quran, the exact same creature is described with words that mean dragon or great serpent, which emphasizes its immense size and power. So what's going on? Is it a contradiction? Absolutely not. It's a beautiful example of the Quran's literary depth. By using different words, the text paints a richer, more complete picture of the miracle, highlighting different aspects of it depending on the context of the story. Just like the first sign, this second one is also deeply personal. God tells Moses to do something really simple, something he's probably done 1,000 times, put his hand inside his robe. But this time, when he pulls it out, it's going to be transformed into another undeniable proof of his divine mission. So Moses pulls his hand out, and it's just glowing with this otherworldly light. And the text is super specific here. It's a brilliant white light without disease. This is a crucial detail because it makes it absolutely clear that this isn't some kind of skin ailment like leprosy. This is a miracle, a manifestation of pure divine energy radiating from Moses himself. So we've got a staff that turns into a serpent and a hand that glows with divine light. These are way more than just impressive tricks, right? They're demonstrations of a power that completely transcends the laws of nature as we know them. They are a wake-up call, really. A challenge to look beyond the surface of reality and to consider the possibility of a higher power. And this is where the story takes a fascinating turn, from this dramatic narrative into a really deep philosophical exploration of the very nature of existence. This, right here, is the heart of the matter. You see, the story of Moses' miracles is so much more than just a good story. It's actually the foundation for a powerful argument for the existence of God, an argument that tackles one of the biggest questions of all. Why does anything exist in the first place? To really get a handle on this argument, we first have to understand a key concept in Islamic philosophy: wujud, or existence. Think of it like this. Everything in the universe, you, me, the stars, everything, we're all contingent beings. That just means we could have existed, or we could have not existed. Our existence isn't a given. But God, on the other hand, is what's called a necessary being. That means God must exist. God's non-existence is a logical impossibility, kind of like a square circle. This necessary existent is what we call God.
And the Quran itself gives us this amazing tool to think about this. In another chapter, it asks this simple but incredibly profound question: were they created from nothing, or were they their own creators? This question sets up a kind of logical puzzle. And when you solve it, it leads you to one single, inescapable conclusion: there must be a creator. Okay, let's unpack this step by step. Option 1, we came from nothing. Well, that's impossible. You can't get something from absolute nothing. It violates a basic law of logic. Option 2, we created ourselves. But that's a dead end too. To create something, you have to exist first. You can't pull yourself up by your own bootstraps if you don't have any boots to begin with. So if we didn't come from nothing and we didn't create ourselves, then there's only one logical option left. We were created by something else, something that has always existed, something that is a necessary existent. And that is God.
Now, armed with these incredible signs and the unshakable truth they represent, Moses and his brother Aaron are ready for their ultimate challenge, a face-to-face showdown with the most powerful man in the world, the arrogant and tyrannical Pharaoh. So Moses lays it all on the line. He performs these unbelievable miracles, signs that the text says are clear to see. But what's Pharaoh's reaction? He immediately dismisses them as obvious magic. It's a classic move, isn't it? When you're confronted with something that completely shatters your worldview, you try to put it in a box, to label it as something familiar that you can control. For Pharaoh, magic was a convenient label that allowed him to avoid the terrifying truth that he was in the presence of a power far, far greater than his own. But here's the million-dollar question. Did Pharaoh and his court really, truly believe it was just magic? Or was their denial just a smokescreen, a desperate attempt to cling to power in the face of an undeniable truth? The answer, as we're about to see, is a pretty chilling insight into the human capacity for self-deception. This is easily one of the most powerful psychological verses in the entire Quran. It says, "They rejected the signs, even though their souls were certain of them." In other words, they knew. Deep down in their core, they knew what they were seeing was real. Their denial wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an intellectual error. It was a choice, a conscious, deliberate decision to reject the truth, not because they didn't believe it, but because they simply couldn't handle what it meant.
So why did they do it? The Quran gives us two reasons, and they have absolutely nothing to do with logic or evidence. The first is injustice, Zoman. They were oppressors, and they had no intention of giving up their power over the people. The second reason is arrogance, Uluin. They couldn't stand the thought of submitting to a higher authority, of admitting that there was someone or something more powerful than them. It was this toxic cocktail of pride and power that blinded them to the truth, even when it was staring them right in the face.
And that brings us to our final lingering question, one that really gets to the heart of this entire story. Why a serpent? In a land filled with master sorcerers, why would God choose a miracle that could so easily be dismissed as a magic trick? Well, the answer is as brilliant as it is profound. The miracle was a test. It was a challenge to the so-called experts of the day to see if they could tell the difference between a cheap illusion and the real, world-altering thing. It was a perfectly crafted message, designed to expose their arrogance and their willful blindness. And in the end, it was a message they chose to ignore, a choice that would ultimately seal their fate.